Welcome to the lesson on writing the title and abstract. Let's start by taking a look at where we are on the project management diagram. So we are still in the executing phase. This will be the last part of what we do in this executing phase, and then we're going to move on to the closing phase. We'll have a lesson on editing and revising and submitting, and that will be the final lesson. So we're at the next to last lesson. So let's get started. The learning outcomes for this lesson are as follows. At the conclusion of this lesson, you will be able to explain the purpose of a title. You will be able to describe and identify the types of titles. You will be able to write a complete, concise, and specific title, explain the purpose of an abstract. You'll be able to describe all the key elements of the abstract. You'll be able to write an abstract that contains all of these elements and that conforms to journal requirements. And you'll be able to avoid the common problems of the title and of the abstract. Let's start with titles. What are the functions of the title? One of the main functions is that it provides the basis for readers finding your article. And so these days, they're going to find your article by searching a database like Web of Science or PubMed or Google Scholar or Scopus, and they're going to search it with certain terms. And if your paper has those terms in the title, it's more likely that the readers are going to have your paper come up as a top hit. So they're going to find your article, they're going to see the title first, they're going to read that title, and hopefully they'll become interested. They'll say, oh, that's an interesting title, I want to know more. And so they will click on the title, they'll see the abstract, and they'll read the abstract. So it's kind of a marketing tool. It's a way for readers to find you and get interested in what you're talking about. It's also going to let the reader know what the main topic and subject of your study is going to be. You might work on, let's say you work on Alzheimer's disease. Just working on Alzheimer's disease doesn't mean that every other researcher working on Alzheimer's disease is going to be interested in your paper. For example, if you're doing research on a diagnostic, researchers that are involved in treatment may not be interested in your diagnostic paper. Likewise, you may not be interested in their treatment papers. So having a title that gives the readers an idea of what your study is about is really important. You're also going to use it to distinguish your work from others that are similar. So if you're doing a diagnostic for Alzheimer's disease, how is that different from this other paper that was looking at a diagnostic for Alzheimer's disease? So your title needs to show how those two are different from each other. Titles can be structured in several different ways. So let's look at the types of titles. One of them is the indicative title or the declarative title. And this is a title that's in the form of a sentence, and it usually declares a result. That's why it's called a declarative title, or it indicates what a result. There's also the descriptive type of title, and this is going to describe the content of the study. And then there's a question type of title, which literally asks a question in the title. And by asking that question, it's implying a promise that they're going to answer that question in the course of the paper. There can also be compound titles. This is a title that has two parts. And any of these indicative, descriptive, or question titles can also be a compound title. Let's look at some examples of these title types. So indicative or declarative title type examples are here. A recently involved isoform of the transcription factor BES1 promotes brassinosteroid signaling and development in Arabidopsis thaliana. So you see that's a complete sentence. It has a subject, it has a verb, which is promotes, and then it has an object. So it's a complete sentence. And it's telling a result. This transcription factor promotes brassinosteroid signaling. Another example is this one. Gibberellins regulate iron deficiency response by influencing iron transport and translocation in rice seedlings. So again, that's a complete sentence, has the structure of an English sentence, and it tells a result. Some examples of descriptive titles are understanding the biochemical basis of temperature-induced lipid pathway adjustments in plants. So that's not a complete sentence, which is fine. It doesn't need to be. It's describing what's in that paper. It's describing what they're doing in this paper. They're working on understanding the biochemical basis. Another example is transposition of a rice mutator-like element in the yeast Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Again, it's not a complete sentence, but it's telling what's going to be in that paper, what the study is about. Some examples of question titles are cadmium-induced copper deficiency responses in Arabidopsis thaliana. Are phytochelatins involved? So notice that that one is also a compound title. It has two parts. So it's a compound question title. Another example is, does abiotic stress cause functional B vitamin deficiency in plants? So by asking that question, the authors are implying that they're going to answer whether or not abiotic stress causes functional B vitamin deficiency. That's kind of their research question. So how do you write a good, strong title? Well, one thing your title should be is concise, yet complete. And it's also clear. Okay, so those example titles we looked at, they were varying lengths, but none of them were really long. So they were concise, they were complete, and they were clear. So those were good titles. Now, some people are under the impression that declarative titles are the best. That's the way to go. But they're not necessarily the best titles. Don't just automatically write that type of title. A couple of things to keep in mind. Research studies that have looked at citation rate versus title types have found that colons tend to be associated with higher citations. In other words, colons indicate a compound title. So compound titles tend to be cited more, and question mark titles tend to be cited less. Why that is, no one really knows, but those are the trends from past publications. It doesn't mean that compound titles are better. It doesn't mean that question titles are worse. You can choose any of these types of titles, but it's just good to be aware of the different types and the implications that they might have on your citation rate. Additionally, shorter titles are associated with higher citation rates. So don't make your title too long. Keep it short, keep it concise. And you should avoid abbreviations in the title unless it's a standard abbreviation like DNA or PCR or something like that everyone knows or everyone should know. You can use those abbreviations, but don't use any specialized abbreviations in the title.